subscribe and, you know, like the video. Isn't Yasuke like a super niche figure that has very little history? Average Japanese person never heard of him? No, of course not. Are you kidding me? Yasuke has been in very famous Japanese works throughout history without any sort of problem, any sort of friction whatsoever. What are you talking about? No, he is not like a random super niche figure at all. He is very well known. He's been in many different animes. No, this only became a problem because Americans made a big stink about it. Bro, what the fuck is up with the Japanese right-wing hogs hating Kurds? Oh, that's another very funny story. Yasuke was not a samurai. Do some research. Oh my god. Okay, he was a retainer, dude. Oh my god. Shut the fuck up. Okay? The notion that he is not like colloquially regarded as a samurai is also a new phenomenon. Shut the fuck up. He has been depicted as a samurai a million times over. Anyway, aside from that silliness, there was another thing. Oh, you asked me about why they hate the Kurds. So Japan and Turkey have had very positive relationships for quite some time. I had this long and extensive conversation with a bunch of researchers and a bunch of academics that live in Japan about a bunch of different issues. This one was one of them that actually shocked me. That the initial implementation of the constitution in the Ottoman Empire before the actual constitution by the Young Turks was actually seen by the Japanese as an initiative of like an Asiatic style country that has existing relations with Europe, and it was actually implemented, or it took notes from the initial Turkish or the Ottoman constitution that was in like the 19th century. And that Japan has always had a long-standing, relatively positive relationship with Turkey. And there's a ton of Turks that live in Japan. And there's also a ton of Kurds that also live in Japan. And apparently they work in construction, mostly owned by Turkish, Turkish people living in Japan. And people are upset about the Kurdish population and its increase because they can apply for refugee status in Japan, because Japan has like a interesting refugee status. They have like an interesting approach to refugees where they don't officially give. Why are you reading this? I'm not. I'm just explaining the things to you. I'm not reading anything. But Japan has this weird situation where you can be in legal limbo, like you're not officially a citizen, but you have, but you're not kicked out of the country either. Where a lot of Kurds apparently fit in that role, where they're cheap migrant labor for the most part, and this has been very frustrating for Japanese xenophobes. You actually don't get the historic context for the new Assassin's Creed game. Stop being disingenuous and listen to the explanations. You have to play the game. First of all, I will be playing the game. And secondly, what the f are you talking about? If you're going to tell me that Yasuke wasn't a real figure, a real historic figure that has played... yes, I will be playing it on stream. If you think that Yasuke was not a important Japanese figure, you're delusional, which I don't think you're saying anyway. You're trying to debate me into playing this game, and I'm going to. Yes, when the game comes out, I will be playing Assassin's Creed. But also, Assassin's Creed is not real historical works anyway. Anyway, but yeah, people are very anti-Kurdish in Japan. They think Kurds are coming to, you know, steal their jobs. Which is kind of funny. The Apple of Eden is real. Yeah. There is a significant Kurdish and Turkish population in Japan. Turkey exporting its Kurdish hate? No, actually, as a matter of fact, a lot of Kurds speak Turkish, so the Turks and the Kurds work alongside one another in Japan. That's why there's so many doner shops in Japan. I frequented one of them, if you remember, and made Miskif eat doner, even though it was very good doner. Anyway, in the AC Comics, Nikola Tesla caused the giant explosion that happened in Russia, the one that we think was probably a meteor that vaporized on impact because it came in so hot. The Ottomans and the Japanese fought together at one point. Ertuğrul, launched in 1863, was a sailing frigate of the Ottoman Navy. While returning from a goodwill voyage to Japan in 1890, she encountered a typhoon off the Kushimoto coast of the Wakayama prefecture. It subsequently drifted into a reef and sank. The shipwreck resulted in a loss of more than 500 sailors and officers. Ali Osman Pasha, the rear admiral, also died. Only 69 sailors and officers survived and returned home later aboard 2 Japanese corvettes. The event is still commemorated as a foundation stone of Japanese-Turkish friendship. Japanese-Turkish friendship is very real, and it shocked me, okay? Here, I'll give you another fact. Many of you probably didn't watch the Fear End episode where I dished out some of these facts. Did you know that Soapland used to not be called Soapland in Japan? Soaplands, for those of you who don't know, are places where prostitution is semi-legal, even though everything you can do up to the point of the act is considered legal. The act for pay is illegal, but the Japanese government overlooks that fact and says, oh, the acts are happening because they fell in love with one another, right? Now, soaplands are places where these kinds of acts happen. Before they were called soaplands, they used to be called Turkish baths. That's right. And then the Turkish government was like, we don't like that you're calling your brothels Turkish baths. So they forced, by utilizing the good long-standing relationship that they had, they changed it. They got the Japanese government to no longer refer to them as Turkish baths, but instead as soaplands. That's where the name Soapland comes from. Isn't that crazy? In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Nipponophilia took hold of the Ottoman press with hundreds upon hundreds of articles written about Japan. I never knew that my weebo ass actually was unlocking epigenetic memories that my ancestors had, okay? It is in my blood as a son of the Ottomans. I am an ancestral weeb. Relations between the two countries started after the Turkish frigate Ertuğrul hit a reef and sank. We already covered that. There is a Kushimoto Turkish Memorial and Museum in 2015. The movie 125 Years of Memory was released, marking the 125th anniversary of friendship between Japan and Turkey. The motion picture reflects 2 important historical incidents in Japanese-Turkish relations, the aforementioned sinking of Ertuğrul and the evacuation of Japanese nationals from Iran in 1985. Okay? In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Nipponophilia took hold of the Ottoman press. As an Eastern people who originated in Central Asia, many Turks felt a special affinity for another Eastern Asian nation like Japan, which had modernized without becoming westernized, and vice versa. From what I understand, the Japanese also considered Turks to be of Asiatic descent, but while maintaining their own personal lineage, they also looked to the Turks as the Ottoman Empire as like a powerful empire of Asiatic descent that like the entirety, it's like Pan-Turanism. There was this like weird kind of Pan-Turanist style attitude that some people had in Japanese culture and Japanese society, where they considered the entirety of the Asian continent to be of like one people almost, where all the way from Japan to Turkey, all of the people that lived on these lands were all a part of the same race. You are so happy to be talking about this. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. Barış Manço Japonya konseri bölüm 10. Nane limon kabuğu. Anyway, further adding to the mutual attraction between the Turks and the Japanese was their shared enmity towards Russia, the arch enemy of the Ottomans for centuries, and the new arch enemy of Japan. Already starting to promote the ideology of Pan-Asianism, there it is, the Japanese began to court the Sublime Porte, the central government of the Ottoman Empire. The Meiji Emperor sent princes to the House of Yamato to visit the Sultan Caliph Abdülhamit. Abdülhamit'i savundun! Bearing gifts and proposals for treaties and generating much excitement in the Ottoman press. Abdülhamit II admired Japan to a certain extent, but was fearful of the popular rumors of the Meiji Emperor would convert to Islam and proclaim himself to be the Caliph, the original Caliph, thereby displacing the Sultan Caliph as the object of veneration from all the world's Sunni Muslim. The Committee of Union and Progress greatly admired Japan, which they took as their model. The fact that an Asian nation like Japan had defeated Russia in 1905 and the traditional enemy of the Ottoman Empire was very inspiring to the Unionists, and the Unionist newspapers all portrayed Japan's victory as a triumph not only over Russia, but also over Western values. But it was also reciprocated on the Japanese front as well, okay? Turks admired the Japanese, and the Japanese admired the Turks for the same reasons, where they saw them as united as one people, this like Pan-Asianist culture and ethnicity that had dominated over empires such as the Russian one or even the West in general. Anyway, And it's partially because the Turks initially come from the Asian steppe, right? The Turkic peoples span across the entirety of the vast state. Okay, the Turks originated as a people living in the north of the Great Wall of China, with the first mention of the Turks in history occurring in a letter written to the Chinese Emperor Wen in 585 AD. Over the centuries, the Turks have wandered across Eurasia, settling in very large numbers in Anatolia after their victory over the Romans at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071. The Unionists were proud of the East Asian origins of the Turkish people and spent much of the time glorifying Turan, Pan-Turanis, which was the name they had adopted for the homeland of the Turks in East Asia that was located somewhere north of the Great Wall of China. As the Chinese and Arabs were the traditional enemies of the Turks, there are no ties of friendship to celebrate these peoples. Ziya Gökalp, the chief ideologue of the Young Turks, charged in a 1913 essay that the sword of the Turk and likewise his pen have exalted the Arabs, the Chinese, and the Persians rather than themselves, and that the modern Turks needed to turn back to their ancient past. Gökalp, that is the most Turkish ass name, by the way, Gökalp. Oh my God. Argued it was time for the Turks to once again study the important figures of their own Turco-Mongol tradition, such as Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, and Timur, and Hulagu Khan. The modernization policies carried out by the Unionist regime in 1908 after the Young Turk Revolution were closely modeled after the modernization of Meiji Japan, which is interesting because the initial Japanese constitutional movements were actually, from what I understand, took note from the early attempts in the Ottoman Empire for a constitution. Why are you so fascinated by this fascist drivel? What? How could I not be fascinated by like weird ass parts of Turkish history? Like, what do you mean? Also, I'm making light of the silliness in terms of like Pan-Turanist attitudes, but it's still historically relevant. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this is kind of all I do. Most of my jokes are this, like literally this, making fun of historical variants of the hog sentiment that is expressed today. Both, early versions of the same kind of hog sentiments, or even the modern versions of these hog sentiments. It's also fascinating. That's why I said earlier that I am a racism sommelier. Anyway, but that's the fun stuff. Following the founding of the Republic of Turkey, diplomatic relations were established in 1924 and the first embassies opened in 1925. The first Japanese ambassador to Turkey was Sadatsushi Ushida, who later in 1926 proposed and established a Japan-Turkey Society, a non-profit organization aiming mutual exchange between Turkey and Japan. During the 1930s, Japan engaged in a secret attempt to create an Islamic state in Central Asia with Japanese backing, with the Ottoman Crown Prince Shehzade Mehmet Abdülkerim as a sultan in the Kumul region. The plot failed to materialize. Now, this is the other thing that the Japanese imperialists did with regular frequency. I've talked about one version of this, which was operating under the notion that Jewish people were special money peoples, magical money people. They wanted to take all of the Jews and basically build Israel, but in Manchuria, like, because they had a bunch of colonies at this point. And what does a colonial superpower do? What does a colonial regional power do? They establish non-ethnic subgroups within an area that they are seeking to dominate, because those ethnic groups will obviously be servile to the interests of the colonial superpower. One example of this is what England did with the implementation of Zionism and with, by sending Jewish people to Israel, what is now known as Israel, which was British Mandate Palestine at the time. So they kind of just got there before the Japanese could ever implement it. Anyway, so one of the things that they wanted to do apparently was to bring Muslims into other areas of colonial other areas of colonial exploit. What is this? The article was talking about Ottomans' occupation of Arabia and its historical problems with each other. Also, I don't like the Ottomans. LMFAO. Pan-Arabia would never join in their dreams. Who must go? Arabia won. Yeah. Classic Arab sentiment. Not going to say anything, but it doesn't seem like the Western allegiances have proven to be good. Okay? I'm just saying, Ottoman Empire, significantly better on the issue of Palestine than what these Western dogs have done. Okay, classic Mamluk defender. That's all I'm saying. I'm not holding on to old gripes like many Turks do to this day, by the way. Okay, many Turks still think that they were they were betrayed by the Arab dogs. They literally hate Arabs partially for that reason. They're like, how dare you go and work with the British, you piece of shit, is the attitude. I don't really give a shit. I understand why you know, Arab nationalism chose to do that. It does, however, feel like it was not the best gamble. All I've heard from the last 30 minutes was that the Turks are Chinese. Since when have Western relations been bad for Arabs? I don't know. I can't think of any instance. It seems like the MENA region is doing just great. It's doing so good. But in any case, while Turkey had declared war on Japan on February 1945, it was also entirely symbolic. As you know, Turkey chose, for understandable reasons, to stay out of World War II. They were like, listen, Germans, we did this one time. It wasn't the best idea. We're going to stay out of it this time. Okay, we got our own problems to deal with. So they were in allegiance with the Allied forces, declaring symbolic war against Japan. So in 1985, the almost century-old gesture of kindness was reciprocated during the Iran-Iraq War as hostilities escalated to an extent that all aircraft were threatened with being shot down. Turkey sent an aircraft to rescue the 215 Japanese nationals who were living in Tehran at the time. Turkish government issued a statement. We have not forgotten the rescue of the sailors of the Ertuğrul. Thus, once we heard there were Japanese citizens in need of help, we went to their rescue. 2010 marked the 120th anniversary of the Turco-Japanese relations, with over 186 events held throughout Turkey during the year. In this year, Turkey held the Japan Year 2010 in Turkey. On July 10th, 2010, Prince Tomohito of Mikasa, cousin of the emperor, attended the opening ceremony of the Kaman Kalehuyuk Archaeological Museum. The museum was built with funding from Japan. The prince has often engaged himself actively to promote Japanese-Turkish relations. Moreover, in the wake of the Great East Japan earthquake in March 2011, and the earthquakes in Turkey in the eastern part in October and November 2011, respectively, both countries provided each other with support, which strengthened their relationships between the two nations. The year 2019 is the Turkey year in Japan. No, I am not the first. I am not the first weeb out of Turkey, although I often thought mistakenly that I was. It turns out that I was simply repeating a multiple century year pattern, a return to the norm, if you will. Okay? Bro pulled out the wiki pages to justify why it's socially acceptable to be a disgusting weeb. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm giving historical context to why I feel a certain way. Okay? But many of you, on the other hand, are jealous. Because why? Because America has no positive relations with Japan of this sort. And it's one born out of death and destruction. That's right. That's right. Don't be jealous, Angloids, that you do not have long-standing 100 years of history. You merely adopted being a weeb. I was born into it, and it was so much a part of my soul that I did not even know that it existed deep within me. Okay? We of the Chinese Haas head delegation find your warmth and proximity to Japan, given our people's shared historic overlap, alarming. Okay, fair. I can't be too much of a weeb because I also am a Sinobu as well. Anyway, criticism of you sounds a little racist / jealousy, to be honest. I know. Yeah. To turn this back on Yasuke, criticism of Yasuke is oftentimes born out of a lack of accurate historical knowledge. And criticism of my weeb ways as a Turk is racist. Okay? It is like criticizing one who drinks water or breathes air. Being a weeb comes natural to me. Okay? Turkish doner kebab and Japanese anime? Kebab da!
トルコ料理か。そう、ドネルは回す。
Oh my god, he's right! It does mean to turn!
回転させながらじんわりと火を入れることで脂身やスパイスの旨味が溶け合うように焼き上がっていく。香ばしい油の匂い。超うまそう。
Oh, すごいかっこいいドーナルカバブAnyway. Have you not seen Food Wars? No. Don't show this to Panturinas. It will destroy the Turkish-Japanese relationship. I mean, yeah, I know. This is also a dark chapter in the Turanist Japanese relations. Okay, but guess what? You know who actually said, "You are brothers. You must not fight"? God. That's right. What happened? What happened in the Mongol invasions of Japan? Famously, what happened? Typhoons, that's what. Twice. Not once, but twice. Because God said, you are brothers. You must not fight one another.